Hi, welcome to AP World History. This is an essay writing module for the AP World History DBQ that I've made for you guys to help you with your essay writing. Now, within this lesson are important notes that you'll need to write down in a new notebook. There are short quizzes after each module, and the notes you write will surely come in handy as you take each quiz. Good rule to remember: if the teacher writes it on the board or has it displayed in a presentation, then you should probably write it down as well. And a few suggestions for you as you go through this new endeavor of AP World History. Get a new notebook that is clean, fresh, and will only be used for AP World History. This will help you stay organized, and while taking notes, please make sure that you write down the title of the lesson and then the slide title to help with your organization as well. Now, the DBQ points lesson that we're going to go through today is an overview of the points that can be earned on the AP World History DBQ essay. And each of the points within the DBQ essay will also have a video lesson that goes more in depth with specific examples. Now, there won't be examples from your summer work assignment. However, I will provide examples so you know and understand how to earn these points. And as always, email me with any question that you have about essay writing or the summer work in general. I am definitely here to help. Okay, and for some of you who don't know this, there will be one document-based question on your AP World History exam that's administered in May. Now, the document-based question will have one of the following historical thinking skills: comparison, causation, changing continuity over time, or periodization. And as always, the DBQ will assess historical thinking skills like argumentation, analyzing evidence, contextualization, and synthesis. So very important things to keep in mind. Okay. On the DBQ essay, there are 7 points that you can earn. No more. And generally, everyone starts out at 0. And as these elements are in your essay, they exist within your essay, then you earn that point. Okay, your thesis is worth 2 points. The first point is answering the prompt. It's a historically defensible claim in response to all parts of the question. And it must be in the introduction. And I prefer that students give at least 3 answers. Generally, 2 is okay, but with 3 answers, I think you should always go above and beyond. And with 3 answers, if one of your answers is incorrect, then you still will have met the guidelines. So 3 is always a good rule of thumb when it comes to developing your thesis. Answering to all parts of the question, that's very important as well. Because if your task is to analyze contributing factors, for example, then you're looking for just causes. If it asks for an analysis of the impact of something, then those are just the effects. But if it asks for the causes and the effects, then you would need at least one of each. If it asks for you to analyze the actions or the reactions of something, when those behaviors or those decisions that are made would all have to be included in your thesis. If your task is to compare, actually with that one, there's confusion on comparing. If it asks for a comparison, then it is asking for similarities and differences. It doesn't always have to say compare and contrast. It could just simply say compare, and then you would definitely need to include similarities and differences within your thesis. The second point for the thesis category is the argument development. This one, at first, is a little difficult for students to understand, but if you can think of it as developing and supporting your thesis that recognizes and accounts for historical complexity by illustrating the relationships between your evidence and your thesis, then it becomes a little bit easier to understand. And I also require that this extension of your thesis be put in the introduction. And then, of course, as we get further in, you'll understand that the analysis of your thesis for each of your answers in your body paragraphs is included in this argument development statement. But if you can develop and extend your thesis within your introduction paragraph after those answers have been presented, then it makes for a very strong essay. And within the introduction, each answer should be presented in the thesis with its own statement. When you give all of your answers, like for example, you have 3 answers and you give it in 2 sentences or even 1 sentence, now you're listing your answers, and that is not as effective and not as strong writing as giving each answer its own sentence. It's like showing attention to each one. So if you can think of each answer within your thesis, each of the 3, getting its own statement, it makes for much better writing. And remember, this is a formal writing assignment, so you want to reach that higher level and those high expectations. And each answer should also get its own argument development statement, that extension of your thesis and how you are addressing the question. Each one of those should also get its own statement. Within the DBQ, the introduction is pretty extensive, but I've set it up, and the next module that you'll get into, the next video lesson, is the format of the DBQ. And the format that I've set up for my students, it's possible to earn several points of those 7 within just your introduction. Okay, so first 2 points are your thesis, if you've answered the prompt and your argument development. Okay, the next 2 points are document analysis. The first point is for using all 7 documents to support your argument. College Board or AP Central, they just require using 6 of the 7, and you'll always have 7 documents, no more, no less. But in my class, I require that you use all 7, because if you misinterpret one of the 7 documents or use it incorrectly, you could still get those points on the AP exam. So throughout the entire school year, I require that my students use all 7 for that exact purpose. And using the document means that you've explained the content of the document. You have to go beyond just repeating the information or the evidence that you find within the document. You can't just, this is what the document says. You have to go beyond doing that. You have to actually explain and interpret the meaning of the document and how that applies to your answer. And that's how the document will support your answer. It's very important that you don't quote. To be honest, I could quote from a book of quantum physics, and I probably am not going to know what I'm talking about. So, it's very important that you don't quote from your document, because that does not demonstrate you understand what the document means. Okay? And interpret the information and analyze the interpretation. That's part of utilizing or using the document when you're supporting your thesis. The second point in your document analysis category is sourcing all 7 of your documents. Okay, so you use all 7 and then you source all 7. And the sourcing category that I have, it's pretty self-explanatory, and it gets right to the point. It hits all the good stuff. There's a HIP analysis. The HIPP stands for historical content, intended audience, the author's point of view, and the purpose. So when you're looking through a document or an excerpt from something, or an image or a chart or a map, when you're looking through this document, if you can utilize the content and the audience, who this document was created for, the point of view of the author or the source, and then their purpose, why this document was created. When you do that after you've utilized the content, after you've utilized and explained the content of the document, that's further support of your thesis and makes for a much stronger argument. And that stronger interpretation, when you use it as evidence, is very important. And it's, obviously it's worth a point itself. And the acronym that I give my students in order to do the HIP analysis is called soapstone. The subject, the occasion, the audience, the purpose, the speaker, and the tone. What is this about? Is this about the economy? Is this about some social injustice? What's the subject of this document? The occasion. Is this a gathering of scholars that are peers, or is this an actual formal setting where they're addressing their leader? The audience. Was this intended for an elite group of people? Was this intended for, the lower classes, or was this intended for the entire nation? Who's the audience? The purpose. Why has this information been recorded and why is it being given to other people? The speaker. Who's the source? Okay, and the tone. What's their point of view? What's their message here? Okay, soapstone is a great way to get all of the HIP analysis within your sourcing your document in order to earn the point. And each document should have an explanation statement. Okay, that explanation statement is using the document. Okay, and then each document should have a sourcing statement. All right, and that's how you can earn those points. And a good rule is to use 3 separate documents to support one answer. Out of your 7, you'll have one answer, and you should use 3 documents to support that one answer. And once you've explained what's in a document, then you source that document. Okay, then you would go on to the second one and so forth. And again, when we get into the DBQ format and the outline that I've created for you, I'll show you how that works. But each document will basically have 2 statements. One's an explanation statement and one is a sourcing statement. Okay. All right. The next set of points, this is the 5th and the 6th point, is evidence beyond the documents. The first one in this category is contextualization. You have to establish the argument or your thesis by explaining the broader historical events, developments, or processes immediately relevant to the question. Okay, the reader must have some kind of a setting that demonstrates the time, the place, the situation, that explains how the circumstances and the issues of the prompt developed. So if you can think to yourself, what happened leading up to the prompt or leading up to the question, that's what you're answering. And you also, of course, need to be specific with the time, the place, the situation. What's going on. The question that you've been given for a DBQ essay is significant enough for them to ask you about, to write an essay over. So how did we get to that point? And that's your context. I'm sure you've tried to give someone some kind of a story and they say, wait a second. What do you mean? Who was that? When did this happen? And then you say, okay, is that guy a couple of years ago when we did this and went over here? That's context. You're providing context for a story. Okay. And I'm sure there have been times when you've been talking to someone and within the conversation, someone has said, oh, no, you used that out of context. It's out of place. Okay, so what you're doing with your essay is you're giving your question and your thesis or your answer, you're giving it a place within history. Okay, and you're making it part of the historical process. And that's why contextualization is very important. And your last point within the evidence beyond the documents is outside evidence. So they give you 7 documents to use to support your answer, but you also have to come up with additional evidence. This would be historical information that you already know. This is your prior knowledge that would further support your thesis, okay? And it's very important that you provide multiple examples. And the reason for that is if you only provide one specific example and it's incorrect, then you don't get that point. But if you've provided 3 specific examples and one of them is wrong, you still have the possibility of getting that point. Okay, remember, you always want to go above and beyond and do more than what's asked of you, just in case the information you've provided is inaccurate. So, the outside evidence is important because and you need to provide multiple examples or additional pieces, and they have to be specific. Never leave your AP reader asking who, what, when, where, which, why, how. You never want to leave them asking more questions for more information. Always, always be specific, okay? And this is for something that's not found in the documents, okay? I'm not saying outside evidences and go to a different place in a different time period. That's not what outside evidence means. Outside evidence means you're still in the same place, you're still in the same time period, you're still addressing the same issue, but you've got more information, more evidence. It's just not found within the documents that have been given to you. Okay? In order to further support or qualify your argument, your thesis. And in doing so, what you're doing is you're making a really, really strong argument. So this is essentially or very similar to a persuasive essay, really, really, really high up there. And the last point to your DBQ is synthesis. And now the synthesis is important because it also supports your argument. In case you haven't picked up a theme here, it's all about supporting your thesis. The synthesis point can be earned by extending the thesis, by explaining the connections between the argument or your thesis and one of the following. You don't have to do all three of these, you just need to do one. Okay? An explanation of a development in a different historical period, situation, era, or geographical area. Understand that there's a difference between a time period and an era. Generally, most historians divide up world history with that of humans existing on Earth within 6 time periods. But within one time period can be multiple eras. Okay? For example, the Age of Enlightenment. That is just an era within a time period. Okay? The second possible possible way to earn the synthesis point is a course theme or an approach to history that is not the focus of the essay. So if your essay addresses some type of social theme, then in order to earn the synthesis point, you could take, your issue here and talk about the political or economic or cultural or intellectual impact that it's had with history. And you'll understand that there are easy connections within each of these themes made to another. Like, for example, political and economic, that's easy to find those connections between those two themes. Political and social, that's easy because a lot of laws that are passed and rules that citizens have to abide by have significant social impact. Right? Social and cultural, obviously there's connections there. And as we've learned, intellectual history, this would be human and environment interaction, spread of disease, things like that. And that very easily can be linked to social. And those aren't the only connections, but whatever is the focus of your essay, you bring in another theme that still addresses that issue, but just from a different approach, and you have the possibility of earning the synthesis point. And the third way is bringing in a different discipline or field of study or inquiry, such as economics, as in economics is a completely different field of study. Government or politics, art, there actually should not be a comma there because that should be art history. Anthropology, biology, medicine, linguistics, those are all separate fields of study that are important to history and interpreting information. And so historians highly value different fields of inquiry, and they're included especially when interpreting past documents. And primary sources are so important, and that's why these fields of study can be important. So if you could bring in, for example, how evolutionary biologists have impacted the study of the agricultural revolution, right? You're utilizing synthesis. And of course, you'd need a further explanation for that. But those are your 7 points for the DBQ essay. And you should, of course, have that goal of earning all 7 points. Okay? Thesis is 2. Points 3 and 4 is your document analysis. 5 and 6 is your evidence beyond the documents, and your last point, your synthesis. Again, email me with any questions that you might have. I am here to help. Okay, I will see you guys again for the DBQ format and outline.